The air in Port Charles was thick with tension, the kind that appeared to settle over the town when secrets were about to be revealed. The Quartermain estate, with its spacious rooms and gleaming surfaces, served as a quiet witness to the months-long drama. Drew Kane, previously revered for his charm and ambition, had become a divisive figure, with his actions casting a pall over those closest to him. Willow Corinthos was at the core of it all, a woman torn between devotion, love, and the weight of treachery. The events that had led them to this point were a tangled web of lies, manipulation, and hidden truths, and now, as General Hospital fans whispered, Drew was about to say 5 shocking words to Willow, words that would echo through her life before his own tragically ended. Willow stood in the dimly lighted living room of the Quartermain home, her hands clutched tightly in front of her. The beautiful light from the chandelier overhead formed delicate shadows on her face, emphasizing the fatigue in her eyes. She'd been through so much, her time in the Dawn of Day cult, the loss of her children in a bitter custody battle, and the dissolution of her marriage to Michael Corinthos. Drew had been her rock through it all, or so she believed. His promises and reassurances had felt like a lifeline as everything else slipped away. However, the whispers throughout Port Charles grew louder, and the truth about Drew began to emerge. Drew entered the room with his normal confident stride, which faltered slightly. His face was pale, and his jaw was tense, as if he was carrying an unbearable load. He had always been a man of calculating actions, a lawmaker with the ability to use situations to his advantage. However, tonight was different. There was a spark of vulnerability in his eyes, a breach in the neatly maintained facade. Willow noticed it right away, and her heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong, Drew?" she inquired, her voice quiet yet full of anxiety. He did not respond right away. Instead, he crossed the room to stand before her, hands buried in his pockets. The quiet between them was oppressive and crushing. Willow's mind raced, recalling events from the previous few months. The custody hearing had been traumatic, with Michael receiving full custody of Wiley and Amelia following a judge's decision that left her stunned. Drew had been there, whispering words of comfort and offering to fight for her, to make things better. But there were brief, uncomfortable times when she questioned whether she genuinely knew the man standing beside her. Drew finally added, "I need to tell you something," his voice low and strained. He looked at her with blue eyes, as if trying to remember her face before everything changed. Willow's breath was trapped in her throat. She'd heard whispers and fragments of discussions that cast Drew in a different light. There were rumors of his association with Nina, her mother, and of projects that went far beyond politics. She disregarded them, clinging to the Drew she wanted to believe in, the man who loved and battled for her. But now, standing here, she could feel the ground change beneath her. Drew paused and ran his hand through his hair. "Willow, He turned aside, his attention fixed on the fireplace, where embers flickered dimly. "I have committed mistakes. Big ones. And you should know the truth before it's too late." Her heart raced in her chest. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice shaking. She moved closer, searching his face for clues. "Drew, please tell me. Whatever it is, we can handle it together." He shook his head, a bitter smirk forming in the corner of his mouth. "You won't want to go through this with me. Not after you hear what I have to say." He took a deep breath, as if to prepare himself, and then looked her in the eyes. "I'm not who you think I am." Willow felt the words like a physical blow, each one striking with a weight that made her chest constrict. 5 words, simple but devastating, shattered the delicate faith she had in him. Her thoughts whirled as she tried to understand what he meant. Was he discussing his feelings? What are his actions? Or something much darker, something that has been lurking beneath the surface all along? "Drew, what do you mean?" she demanded, her voice increasing. "Who are you then?" "Because I've given you everything, my heart, my trust, and my future. I lost my kids because I trusted in you. He startled at her words, remorse flashing on his face. I know, he replied calmly. And I don't deserve any of it. I never did. He took a step closer, his hands reaching out to touch her, but he paused when he noticed the trepidation in her gaze. Willow, I have been lying to you. To everyone. There's something you should know about me and what I've done. The room appeared to close in on them, the walls pressing in as the weight of his confession hung in the air. Willow's thoughts returned to the instances that had raised red flags, the way Drew had managed circumstances to his advantage, the secrets he maintained, and the way he appeared to know exactly what to say to keep her at his side. She attributed it to his political acumen, his ability to maneuver in a world of power and influence. But now she was unsure. Tell me, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me everything. Drew's shoulders dropped, as if the weight of his secrets was becoming too much to bear. He began to speak, his words hesitating at first before flowing out in a torrent. He told her about his past and what he had done to get up the success ladder. He acknowledged to obstructing Michael and Willow's co-parenting efforts and paying off a clinic in Germany to mislead about Michael's desires, leading Willow to assume her spouse had rejected her. He admitted to having an affair with Nina, a betrayal that tore Willow apart, not just because of the infidelity but also because it affected her own mother. And then, in an even more surprising disclosure, he hinted at a tie to Shiloh, the cult leader who had once abused her in ways that haunted her nightmares. I thought I could be someone else, Drew confessed, his voice breaking. Someone better. But I am not. I'm simply me. And I've damaged you in ways I can never undo. Willow stood motionless, her head unable to keep up with the flow of revelations. The guy she had loved and trusted was dissolving before her eyes, revealing a stranger she didn't recognize. Her heart wrenched with the pain of betrayal, but she also felt a glimmer of terror. If Drew was not who he claimed to be, who was he? So, what else was he capable of? Before she could react, a piercing sound broke the silence, a gunshot, sudden and thunderous, ringing around the mansion. Drew's eyes widened, a look of shock and misery on his face as he staggered forward, gripping his chest. Blood ran through his fingers and stained his shirt as he dropped to the floor. Willow shrieked and dropped to her knees beside him, her hands quivering as she attempted to push on the wound. Drew! Oh, no! She wailed, her voice choked with panic. Stay with me. Please. His breathing was shallow, and his eyes flitted as he attempted to concentrate on her. Willow. He said softly. I'm sorry, for everything. The room whirled around her as she screamed for assistance, her hands sticky with his blood. Footsteps pounded in the background, and voices called out, but everything felt surreal and far away. The days that followed were filled with loss, confusion, and unresolved questions. Police surrounded the Quartermaine mansion, looking for clues about the shooter. Theories abounded, some pointed to Willow herself, her sadness and wrath over Drew's betrayal casting her as a suspect in the eyes of those who didn't know her. Others spoke about Drew's political rivals, or possibly someone from his past, who was connected to the secrets he had only recently revealed. The realization that Drew might not have been Drew at all, but Shiloh or someone else entirely, caused shockwaves across Port Charles, leaving everyone rethinking what they thought they knew. Willow, meantime, was left to pick up the shards of her broken life. Drew's 5 words, I'm not who you think, played on a loop in her thoughts, each repeat wounding more. She had lost her children, her marriage, and now the guy she thought she loved, all because she had trusted the wrong people. The weight was crushing, yet she also felt a spark of drive. She would discover the truth, no matter how terrible it was. She owed it to herself, her children, and the life she still had the opportunity to rediscover. As the inquiry into Drew's death progressed, fresh details emerged. A cryptic message discovered in his pocket suggested an unsuccessful meeting, possibly with someone who knew his secrets. Jason Morgan, ever the Guardian, took it upon himself to investigate Drew's background, wanting to discover the truth for Willow's sake. Carly, divided between her commitment to Michael and her difficult relationship with Drew, found herself drawn into the mystery, her instincts telling her that there was more to the story than anybody knew. And Nina, battling with her own guilt over her role in Drew's plots, faced a meeting with her daughter that would either reconcile or end their shattered bond. Port Charles was buzzing with supposition, with residents divided over who Drew truly was and who might have wanted him dead. Was it a slighted ally, a betrayed lover, or someone from his past who had finally caught up with him? Some speculated that Willow herself had snapped as a result of his lies, but those who knew her best refused to accept it. Her anguish was genuine, visceral, and all-consuming, as did her determination to seek the truth. When the turmoil of the inquiry subsided, Willow would sit alone, staring out into the horizon, wondering how she had missed the signs. She remembered how Drew's charm seemed too perfect, his words too perfectly crafted. She remembered the cautions from people around her, Michael, Carly, and even Nina, urging her to accept him for who he was. But love, or what she thought was love, had blinded her, leaving her with only questions and a heart full of sadness. The mystery surrounding Drew's death would not be readily solved. Each revelation exposed additional layers of duplicity and connections to a past that refused to be forgotten. Willow's path forward was about more than simply learning who killed Drew. It was also about rediscovering herself. She had previously been a victim, duped by people who preyed on her trust, but she would not be one again. The 5 words he spoke before dying served as a catalyst, a painful awakening that compelled her to confront the truth about him and herself. As the sun fell over Port Charles, sending long shadows across the town, Willow made a whispered promise. She would respect Drew's legacy by seeking justice for both his death and the life she had lost along the road. The journey ahead would be dangerous, heartbreaking, and full of secrets waiting to be revealed, but she was prepared. Willow felt a spark of strength within her for the first time in a long time, guiding her through the darkness and into the truth, whatever it may be. According to General Hospital teasers, emotions have skyrocketed after Elizabeth Baldwin, Rebecca Herbst, dashed into Carly Spencer's, Laura Wright, office with critical news concerning Willow Tate's, Caitlin McMullen, frantic plan to reclaim her children. On Friday's episode, Elizabeth informed Carly about Willow's plan to play house with Drew Quartermaine, Cameron Matheson, pretending to be in love in order to gain custody of Wiley and Amelia Corinthos, Viren Weaver, Sequoia, and Serenity Mork-Mako. Next week's previews show Carly laughing it off, looking undeterred, but Elizabeth feels she can mediate or persuade Michael Corinthos, Rory Gibson, to back down. However, Michael has serious suspicions about Willow's involvement in the kidnapping of Daisy Corinthos Gilmore, Brendan and Evelyn Beamford. Will Carly and Elizabeth team up to save Willow from her own desperation, or has Willow destroyed too many bridges? Elizabeth's desperate appeal. Elizabeth's visit to Carly is motivated by shock. Willow has revealed that she is returning to Drew, aware of his manipulative methods but certain that he is her ticket to recovering custody of her children. Elizabeth observes Willow spiraling, her decisions spurred by sadness over the custody loss. Elizabeth begs Carly to be a neutral voice, hoping to persuade Michael to rethink for the sake of the children. However, Carly's teaser giggle suggests doubt. After all, Willow's affair with Drew shattered Michael's life. Elizabeth's faith in Carly as a mediator shines through, as she hopes her grandchildren's well-being will sway her. Willow's high-risk gamble. Willow's plan is based on pretending to love Drew and believing in his ability to reverse the custody decision despite knowing his dark side, which ranges from extortion to sabotage. She believes that awareness protects her, but desperation blinds her to the dangers. If Carly joins Elizabeth, they may plan to pull Willow back, pressing Michael to soften. However, Michael's rage over Willow's apparent kidnapping of Daisy renders him inflexible. He regards her as untrustworthy. Willow's plan could fail if Drew detects her insincerity, leaving her isolated. Carly's dilemma: should she help or go away? Carly must make a difficult decision. Should she help Willow, the mother of her grandchildren, or abandon her since she betrayed Michael? Carly's apathy is hinted at in the previews, but Elizabeth's plea may break her resolve. After all, Carly is no stranger to tumultuous family relationships. If Carly mediates, she may be able to broker peace and convince Michael to back down in order to maintain stability. But if Willow has gone too far, Carly may side with her son and let her drown. This may reshape alliances, with Elizabeth trapped in the midst. Elizabeth remained motionless in the hallway of General Hospital, her hands quivering slightly as she gripped her phone. The weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her like a storm cloud threatening to explode. It wasn't easy approaching Carly, of all people, but Elizabeth felt there was no other option. Willow's condition was rapidly deteriorating, and the doctors were running out of choices. There was one last chance, one delicate, unattainable thread of hope, and Carly held the key. Elizabeth paused, suppressing the lump in her throat as she repeated the words in her thoughts. How could she persuade Carly to put aside their years of conflict, resentment, and competitiveness for Willow's benefit? They had fought too many times to list, and Carly was not the sort to forgive lightly. But it wasn't about them anymore. Willow's life was slipping away, and Elizabeth was aware that time was against them. She took a deep breath and moved toward the elevator, her sneakers softly clicking on the smooth floor. As the doors opened, her heart pounded faster. Carly was in Metro Court, leading yet another strategy meeting for the Corinthos family's latest upheaval. This would have to happen face to face. A phone call wouldn't suffice. Elizabeth needed Carly to see the despair in her eyes and sense the urgency. Meanwhile, in Metro Court, Carly sipped coffee with Jocelyn while attempting to maintain a cool demeanor. It had been one problem after another lately: Sonny's unpredictability, Drew's spiraling decisions, Michael's conflict with his mother, and now the mounting instability around Nina's vendetta. Carly believed she'd earned a rare moment of silence when Elizabeth unexpectedly came at her table, her face pale and her voice tight with reserve. "Carly, I need to talk to you," Elizabeth began, her tone quiet but urgent. Jocelyn looked up quickly, sensing the tension. "Is this about Willow?" she inquired, her voice stern and defensive. Elizabeth nodded. "It's regarding Willow's treatment. I wouldn't be here if I had another option." Carly lowered her mug gently, her green eyes narrowing slightly as she observed Elizabeth. "Go on." Elizabeth sat across from her, holding her hands together to keep them from shivering. "Willow's condition is critical. The physicians are doing everything they can, but she isn't responding to her current treatment. A fresh strategy is possible, but it demands a unique contribution from you." Carly's posture tensed. "What are you talking about?" "I've already done all I can. I helped get her tested, discover a match, and have done everything for her." Elizabeth gulped hard. "I understand. I know you did. However, this is no longer about bone marrow or compatibility. This is about consent, specifically legal consent. There is a treatment that could save Willow's life, but Michael is unwilling to take the risk. He is scared of making the wrong decision, and Willow is too weak to make her own. Carly, you are the only person who can reach him right now. He refuses to listen to the doctors. He refuses to listen to me. But he will listen to you." Carly blinked, surprised by the plea. Michael hadn't spoken to her in weeks, not after their recent disagreement about Nina. "Elizabeth. Michael and I don't really get along. He blames me for half of our current situation." Elizabeth leaned forward and lowered her voice. "I understand. But this is not about you or Michael. This isn't about your dispute with Nina, the arguments with Drew, or anything else. This is about Willow. We risk losing Carly if we don't act quickly." For the first time, Carly's confidence wavered. She averted her gaze, blinking quickly to keep tears from falling. Despite everything, Willow was more than simply Michael's wife, she was family. Carly recalled every time she'd tried to be there for her, every time she'd struggled to keep her safe when Nina's drama threatened to tear her apart. It was not an option to lose Willow. Jocelyn moved over to touch her mother's hand. "Mom, you must do this," she whispered. Carly nodded faintly and took a long breath, her thoughts racing with the many complications. Michael's animosity was profound, and Carly knew her son's stubbornness better than anybody. If she pressed too hard, he may shut down totally. If she didn't try and Willow's condition worsened, she wasn't sure she could handle it. "I'll talk to him," Carly finally answered, her voice soft but steady. "No promises, but I'll try." Elizabeth breathed, her shoulders dropping with relaxation. "Thank you, Carly. That is all I can ask." Later that afternoon, Carly went to the Quartermain estate, where Michael had been holed up, managing professional pressures and private concerns over Willow. She discovered him in the living room, huddled over his laptop, his face drawn and exhausted. "Michael," Carly whispered softly, walking inside. He looked up, his jaw clenched. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk about Willow." "I don't want to do this with you right now," he said sharply, closing the laptop with a clatter. Carly did not flinch. She understood his fury was directed at the impossible predicament they were in, not at her. "I understand you're worried. I understand you're fatigued. However, Michael and Willow are both busy. If we wait too long, there will be no options left." Michael shook his head and paced the room. "What if I make the incorrect call? What if I lose her because I allowed them to experiment? Mom, I can't risk it. I cannot risk losing her." Carly gently crossed the room and placed her hands on his shoulders, forcing him to face her gaze. "Doing nothing puts you at risk of losing her. I know it feels safer to stand still, but it won't save her. I need you to trust yourself, and Willow. She would fight if she could. You know she would." Michael's throat worked as he swallowed his emotions. He turned aside, his voice breaking. "I don't know if I can handle this." Carly reached for his hand. "You can. You're stronger than you realize. And you are not alone. I am right here, and I will fight beside you every step of the way. But please, Michael, don't shut me out when Willow needs us most." For a long while, the room was filled with heavy, smothering quiet. Michael then collapsed into the couch, scratching his temples as tears welled up in his eyes. "Okay," he muttered hoarsely. "Okay. I'll talk to the doctors." Elizabeth paced outside Willow's room in the hospital, anxiously waiting. When Carly came with Michael a few hours later, she didn't have to inquire what had happened, the decision was plain on his face. Michael immediately approved the therapy. As the doctors readied Willow for the procedure, Carly stood silently by Elizabeth's side, their shared terror easing the tension between them. Neither woman spoke, but their quiet agreement spoke all. Whatever past they had, whatever hatred they harbored, none of it mattered anymore. Willow's life came first. Hours later, after the procedure was completed, the doctors emerged with cautious optimism. It was not a guarantee, but there was hope, true hope. Carly exhaled shakily, tears falling down her cheeks. Elizabeth stretched out, hesitated, and grasped her hand in a rare show of camaraderie. For the first time in weeks, Carly felt more than confusion and shame. She felt relieved. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't over. There were still battles to fight, with Michael, Nina, Drew, and herself. But now they had a fighting chance of saving Willow. As night descended over Port Charles, Carly stood by the hospital window, peering out at the city lights. The weight of what had nearly been lost clung to her, as did the frail flicker of hope. Tomorrow would bring additional complications, it always did, but tonight, there was a glimmer of hope that they might be able to keep their family together. Elizabeth waited outside Willow's hospital room, pressing her palms against the cool wall, attempting to calm her beating heart. The quiet buzz of equipment blended with the muted footfall of nurses racing by, but all she could hear was the continuous beep of Willow's monitor on the other side of the door. Each sound reminded her of the reality she didn't want to face. Time was running out, and the doctors were out of choices. Willow was withering faster than everyone anticipated. The previous round of treatment had proven ineffective. Her body was failing, and every minute counted. Elizabeth closed her eyes, pushing herself to breathe despite the constriction in her chest. She had seen innumerable people struggle for life, but this was different. Willow was more than just a patient, she was Michael's wife, Carly's daughter-in-law, and a young mother with so much to live for. And suddenly, the only person who could turn things around was the last person Elizabeth wanted to see, Carly Spencer. Elizabeth's thoughts was flooded with memories of her years of tension with Carly. The insults, accusations, and relentless competitiveness had always been tiresome. But none of that mattered now. Willow's life was in danger, and Elizabeth was willing to lose her dignity to save her. She straightened her shoulders, took out her phone, and dialed Carly's assistant at Metro Court. The response was quick. Carly was in a business meeting but could be reached there. Elizabeth hung up without wasting another second. At the Metropolitan Court. The hotel was alive with activity, with waiters darting between tables and voices buzzing around the upmarket dining area. Carly sat in a corner booth with her daughter, Jocelyn, sipping coffee and discussing the latest Corinthos family turmoil. Jocelyn was concerned about Sunny, but Carly's thoughts were scattered. She couldn't ignore her discomfort about Willow. Then she noticed Elizabeth walking toward their table, her face pallid and her eyes haunted. "Elizabeth?" Carly inquired, shocked. "What is going on?" Elizabeth paused in front of the table for a few periods before speaking in a low, tight voice. "I need to speak to you. It is about Willow." Jocelyn's expression intensified immediately. "Is she worse?" Elizabeth nodded slightly. "She is in critical condition. We've exhausted the majority of our alternatives, Carly. There's one more possibility, but it concerns Michael. And right now, he is refusing to make the call." Carly frowned, her tone becoming increasingly suspicious. "What kind of chance? And why come to me?" Elizabeth leaned in, dropping her voice. "There is an experimental treatment. The doctors feel it will stabilize her, but Michael is afraid to authorize it. He doesn't want to lose her for something unproven." Carly leaned back and crossed her arms defiantly. "Do you think I can change his mind?" "Yes," Elizabeth replied forcefully. "He refuses to listen to the doctors. He refuses to listen to me. But he will listen to you. Carly, you are the only one who can reach him right now." Jocelyn lowered her coffee cup abruptly. "Mom, you have to do this." Carly hesitated, caught between rage and terror. She and Michael hadn't spoken much lately because their disagreements over Nina, Drew, and Sunny had strained their relationship. However, this was not about her pride, Nina's betrayal, or anything else. This was about Willow. She eventually nodded, her voice calm yet firm. "Okay. I'll try." At the Quartermain mansion. Michael sat in the living room, laptop open, surrounded by papers he didn't even pretend to read. He scratched his temples, attempting to filter out the sounds of conversations in the hallway and the slight hum of life outside his dread bubble. He looked up as Carly approached in the doorway. "Mom," he murmured stiffly, his voice reserved. What are you doing here? I came to talk about Willow, Carly murmured softly, entering the room. I can't do this right now, he said, slamming the laptop down. Carly approached cautiously, her voice calm yet forceful. Listen to me, Michael. I understand you're worried. I understand you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. But standing still won't save her. Michael's eyes flared with rage. What happens if I approve this treatment and it kills her? How can I live with that? You don't, Carly plainly stated, sitting alongside him. You fought. You fight fiercely, just as Willow would if she could. She will not give up, Michael, and neither will you. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he turned away and shook his head. I don't know if I can do it. You can, Carly replied, reaching for his hand. You're her husband. Her partner. Her guardian. But just now, protecting her entails taking a risk. And you are not alone. I am with you. Always. The stillness between them was heavy and suffocating until Michael nodded. Okay, he said softly, his voice breaking. Okay. I'll do it. Back at the hospital. Elizabeth was pacing when Carly and Michael arrived, relieved to see them together. Michael signed the necessary paperwork, and the doctors immediately started prepping Willow for the experimental treatment. However, not everyone was thrilled. Nina stormed into the hallway, her cheeks flushed with fury. What are you doing? She demanded, looking at Carly. You had no right to influence him. This is reckless. Carly's head snapped up, and her voice was frigid and cutting. This is to save Willow's life. I'll do whatever it takes, Nina. And if you can't take it, stay out of the way. Michael tightened his teeth as he turned to face Nina. Mom is right. This is my decision, not yours. Nina remained dumbfounded for once. She stormed away, enraged, but Carly scarcely noticed. Her attention was solely on Willow. The long night. Hours passed as the operation started. Elizabeth, Carly, Michael, and Jocelyn waited anxiously outside the room, each deep in thought. Drew arrived midway through, with tension between him and Carly. They hadn't spoken much since their argument over her hiding secrets, and now, standing side by side in silence, the weight of everything unsaid weighed heavily on them. Jason arrived shortly after and was sucked back into the family crisis.